welcome to episode 73 of the Craft House Magic podcast. My name's Ellie and I'm coming to you from Norwich in Norfolk in the UK. And today's the 4th of July. So happy 4th of July everybody, whether you celebrate or not. I hope you all have a wonderful day. So today I've got some knitting, some quilting, some bobbin lace, some spinning, some gadget, a blast from the past, a bit of information on my shop update on this Friday, and a bit of a demonstration that I've been asked to do, and I've called it my sort of Ask Me Anything section. So you can find me on Instagram, Ravelry and Facebook as Craft House Magic, and you can also find my website on crafthhousemagic.co.uk, where you can find the show notes as well as things that I sell in my shop to do with knitting, handmade project bags and hand-dyed yarn, etc. So we're having a meet-up in Norwich on the 21st of July, and I just want to announce that I'm changing the venue to the Lamb Inn, which is a pub rather than a cafe, just because the venue that I'd chosen before, I contacted them again and they wanted me to pay a deposit and I wasn't quite sure about numbers, so it's just easier to do it in the Lamb Inn, and you can have a drink if you want to. There is desserts, so that's all that matters. So the spring shawl along's just come to an end. I will be drawing for winners for that shortly, so watch out for that. I normally directly message people on Ravelry, so if you've entered the finished objects thread or been involved in the discussion over in my group in the Ravelry thread, then keep an eye out on your Ravelry messages. You could be a winner. Currently we have the summer sock along going on at the moment, so you can knit any sock pattern as long as it's an adult size sock, and you can enter socks that you haven't knitted more than one sock or 50% before the start of the knit along. So that was on the 15th of June. So come and finish off your pairs of socks, and just cast on more socks, because socks are always a brilliant thing to knit because you can carry around really easy in your handbag and things. So Helen from Giddy Yarns has got a lot of us dyers together in order to do a special 12 Days of Christmas, which is called the 12 Days of Christmas Charity Selection Box, where 25% of the proceeds go to three charities, and she's listed Contact the Elderly, Shelter and Action for Children. And it's going to be 12 20-gram minis, and all the 12 minis are from different dyers, that's very exciting. And it will be available for sale on the 1st of August on Helen's shop, and I will leave links to Helen's shop in the show notes so you can find where the kits are for sale. But I'm just going to tell you who else will be dyeing the minis. So we've got Hannah from Corner of Craft, Debbie from Down Sheepy Lane, obviously Helen herself from Giddy Yarns, Erin from Henny Penny Makes, Kate from Joni Unravelled, Ellen from Kalashik Ellen, or also known as Mrs. Lamb's Yarns, Kelly from Lay Family Yarns, Tracy from Nora George, Leona from Rusty Ferrets, and Lola from Third Vault Yarns, and obviously me, because I'm getting involved too. So there's 12 different minis, and they're all themed on sweets, so watch out for that. There'll be a surprise when you get your parcel through the door. So as I said, they're for sale on the 1st of August, so watch out for the 1st of August on Helen's shop, where they'll be for sale. So I'll leave links in the show notes to everybody who's involved in that as well. Right. Let's get on to the good stuff. So knitting first. I have finished, or should I say we have finished, sock tube that me and Mum were knitting together. So we have a massive big long tube, and that's ready to make into 2 pairs of socks. I've had so many questions off people on how I make a sock tube into 2 pairs of socks. So next week, after the podcast, I'll be publishing a little tutorial on how I do it, because I'm not going to have time to do it today. So next week I will. So watch out for that. This beautiful yarn is dyed by Hayley from Ducky Darlings. And I actually got this yarn in a swap that we had at the Midlands Monthly Meetup, which I haven't been to for ages. I really should go very soon. Everything just gets really busy, and it's in the middle of the week, so I feel like I'm skiving if I go too often. So that's my sock tube shown. I'm going to go on to my Cozy Memories blanket now. So I picked up my Cozy Memories blanket and I cannot stop knitting on it. Let's just find where I am. I might have to stand up just to show you where I've got so far. So I've knitted all these squares up till now, and this week I've knitted those 5. So I shall show you up close what each of them are. So this lovely emerald green is by Owl About Yarn, and it's Verdines. I'll let you read it. I'm not sure what that means. It's probably something very cultural that I've got no idea what it means. I'm afraid I don't know what this one is. I've lost the little tag that came with it. I think I got it in a swap at Christmas one time. It might have been 2 years ago. This lovely one here is Bee and Rose in the Socks Ahoy colourway. Isn't that pretty? And look at this one, pink with little speckles of all sorts of colours. This is a Fine Fish Yarns in an Exhaustion. In the colourway Exhaustion. And finally, this one here is by Felt Fusion and it's called Emerald City. So there we go. 5 squares done this week. One day I will finish my Cozy Memories blanket. So those of you that are relatively new viewers, I have got several tutorials on how I did my Cozy Memories blanket. So the first one is how you do like a square. The second one, it shows you how I add squares onto that initial square. And then the third one shows you how I do my sort of chevron shape. And I don't know whether I can really show you this, but if you look really carefully, the centres of the square are coming towards each other there, and I'm going to do a chevron shape working across the blanket where it sort of goes up and down. If you look at the tutorial, you'll see my diagrams, so it'll make a lot more sense. I will leave links to those tutorials in the show notes as well. So that's my Cozy Memories blanket. Let's pop that up there out the way so I can get the next project to show you. So thirdly, I've got my Battenberg blanket out again. So this is a lovely pattern by Sandra of Cherry Heart, and it's a beautiful way of using up little tiny scraps of yarn. I think it probably takes me about 2 or 3 grams to do one of these little squares. So I'm using little scraps of all different colours, and then I'm using a cream plain base of my own 4-ply yarn to tie them all together. If you are looking for an undyed yarn in a lovely cream base like this, I do have some for sale in my shop if you are looking for that. But that's how far I've got so far. Initially I was thinking I'm going to do a whole blanket on this, but then I found a little cushion that I've got downstairs that I really wanted to cover with these lovely little squares. So I may end up trying to do a really clever little thing, which I don't know if it'll probably work. If not, it's going to be a blanket. Where I'll do a giant triangle and then kind of fold it over and stitch it together so that it sort of covers up at the back with a little button or something. We'll see how this works. I still haven't made it big enough to go around the cushion yet, so you can see whether that all makes sense later. So that's my Battenberg blanket. Lastly, out of my knitting projects, I've been continuing with my Country Garden socks, and this is a pattern that I released last week, and it's English Country Garden because this is the top of the trellis if the lovely garden fence, and then there's butterflies flying all over the sock because I do love a butterfly in the garden. And then I've just got a special heel here where you can see grass growing up the back of the heel, so I've called this the lawn heel. And this is knitted in my own hand-dyed yarn in my English Country Garden colourway to go with the Country Garden socks, and I am on my second one, and I've just finished the trellis on my second sock. So this is actually a really simple pattern, but one of the instructions is a little bit unusual, so I've made a little mini tutorial on how I do this X stitch here, just so that it makes it clear for everybody rather than people reading it and thinking, "Ooh, I've never done that before." but it is quite simple, and that video should help you with that. I've just finished that section and I'm really excited to start the butterflies. I am quite addicted to doing these butterflies on everything now. One of my test knitters said that they were kind of like, you know, the feeling when you're doing self-striping socks and you just want to finish that colour. It's like as if when you've done one row of butterflies, you want to get onto the next, start another row. Anyway, so there we are. So the colourway, like I said, is called English Country Garden, and then I've complemented it on this one with pale green tonal, which I've called the green grass of home, because you have to have a bit of Tom Jones. Also, I wanted to say that these butterflies are a sort of a cable stitch, so it's a good idea if you haven't done cabling without a cable needle. I've got a little tutorial on that as well. If you haven't done cabling without a cable needle, that will really help you on these. But hopefully I've written it detailed enough that even people who have never really done cables before should be able to get on well with the pattern. Right, so that's all my knitting projects talked about. I have a bit of quilting. Now I folded this up, so it's probably going to be really creased up. So last week I showed you that I'd sort of finished the overall panel of my sort of kimono block. But I've added a tree this time in some free motion. It's difficult to show you, it is blowing out slightly. Let's get that closer. So I've done a free motion tree there, which I've stitched. So I drew it out with one of those heaped disappearing pens, and I stitched over it using free motion stitching. And then I've started adding some cherry blossom flowers there, which I've only done to one branch, so that will be all over the tree. So hopefully that'll look nice when it's finished properly. He looks a bit bare at the moment, but once all that cherry blossom's on there, I'm sure it'll look lovely. I have actually, the ones that I've sewn on, I've used some slightly longer beads, and I think I'm going to take those out and find some tiny little round beads, because I think that that'll make the flowers look a bit nicer. But I'm getting there slowly. I keep saying that I'll have finished this by the next episode, and I absolutely haven't. So I've got to put the blossom all over the tree. I've only pinned one of the kimonos here, so I shall be stitching that on properly. And I've also going to add some leaves onto the bamboo block here to sort of incorporate that in a bit better with the rest of the block. But if I stand back a bit, you'll be able to see. So there we go, that's how that's looking so far. I was going to show you another example of the way that I'd done the flowers on the cherry blossom. This is actually a bigger example, the flowers are bigger. This was made by one of the people in my quilt group. They kindly lent it to me so I could show you. So this is how the flowers are made for the cherry blossom. They're completely 3D and they're attached by a bead in the centre. But these are obviously a slightly larger flower. So to create these, what you do is you get a piece of fabric and then some heat and bond or bonder web, and iron that to the surface of the fabric, remove the paper backing off that, and then iron it onto a second piece of fabric, so you've got fabric, heat and bond and fabric on the top, and then you cut out your little flower and it shouldn't fray, and then you can attach them using a little bead. So you just come up through the fabric, put your flower on through the needle and a bead, and go back through the same thing, and then it attaches it like this. And this one is like a hydrangea. Isn't that lovely? So my friend Yvonne had started this, but my other lovely friend Moira completed it. Isn't that a lovely piece? So that's the same sort of principle as the cherry blossom. They're just smaller, so it's harder to explain. So that's my quilting for this week. Dare I say it, I will hopefully finish that quilting block, wall hanging by the next episode. Do you reckon I will? Oh dear. So the next section is my bobbin lace. Now I finished the bookmark that I started on the last or I'd finished on the last episode in terms of the actual bobbin lace, but then I've bound the bottom to completely finish that. I've just put it on the this material so that you can see it a little bit better, although you can't really see the blue. Let's hold it up against the white as well, even though you won't actually be able to see the rest of the white bits then. But you get the idea, there's some pink and blue in there. This was just to use up my threads that I'd got left, really. So I decided to do this swan pattern, and my friend gave me a copy of this out of her book. So it's going to look like that in the end. And I've got no idea what this book's called, because I haven't got a... it doesn't actually say on the photocopy, I'm afraid. If I can find it by next time, I will write it down for you. This is looking more like a duck than a swan at the moment. I need to make some changes to the last bit of bobbin lace that I've done. So I haven't done a lot anyway. But I think I've pulled it too tight just on the forehead of the swan. I'll give you another look. There we go. Hopefully I'll be able to fix that by the next time. I don't really know what I'm going to do with this swan, and I just basically wanted to use up threads because I've got a lot of bobbins that have been wound up with threads already. So I wanted to use some of the bobbins that I'd already wound, and also it's good to try new things, just to sort of have a go at new techniques, as they say. So that's my bobbin lace. And my next section is spinning. So this is very exciting. The lovely Lee from the Luli podcast had contacted me after she'd seen me saying that I'd been to Woolly Worsted and nearly bought a Turkish spindle. And I didn't, because I thought, oh, I'm going to start another lot of spinning. But Lee has sent me a beautiful Turkish spindle to try. And I've been busy having a go at spinning on this, and it is so much fun. So I'd used a top whirl drop spindle before I started spinning on my spinning wheel, and I used to think, oh, it was all right, but it wasn't, I don't know, I just didn't really get on with it that well. It wasn't my favourite thing to do, but this... being able to wrap the yarn around the spindle is so much fun. I don't know why, it just is. And even when I'm just doing plain cream yarn at the moment, oh, it's so much fun. I think I could totally have wrapped that neat around there, but I did try and take these pieces out just to see what it looked like, and I had to wedge them back in, so that probably messed it up a bit. Well, I was so excited. But these spindles are absolutely brilliant. This particular one is from an Etsy shop called Kerry Spindles, and they are beautiful, beautiful quality. I don't know if you can see how lovely that wood is. And they come apart as well, so that you can actually put them sort of flat pack in your bag if you wanted to take them sort of on holiday or anything. So wonderful. I will leave a link to Kerry Spindles. I think it's called Kerry Spindles, yes, and it's an Etsy shop. Really, really beautiful. I did look on the website on her Etsy shop a couple of days ago, and she only had large ones of these Turkish spindles. But of course, if you're going to be spinning a lot of yarn, you might need a larger one. But I thought this was such a cute little thing. Thank you so much, Lee. I'm really pleased that you sent it me to try. Thank you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record a few minutes of footage of me having a go on the drop spindle outside in the garden later, because I find using the drop spindle standing up is much easier. And it's a bit cramped in this room, so it'll be easier to record some of that outside. So I'll pop that at the end of the podcast for you to see. This fleece that I'm spinning is some Shetland roving that I picked up from Edinburgh Yarn Festival from Hawkshaw Sheep. And they're a small local farm in Scotland, and that's spinning up rather nicely, although it'd be very exciting to start spinning some different colours of yarn. But I shall keep you posted. Lee suggested to me to actually keep this by the kettle and just do a few minutes of spinning when you're waiting for the kettle to boil. Brilliant idea. I'm so going to do that. So there we go. I'm hoping to do exactly the same and do some spinning every time I boil the kettle. So I'll expect I'll be having a lot more cups of tea this week. So that's my spinning for this week. I have been using my wheel as well, but I'll save that till next week to show you. So next I've got my gadget. Now, because I've been doing lots of sort of free motion bags and things for the shop, I thought I'd show you a little trick that I like to use. So when you're doing free motion, you obviously have threads that are coming up onto the top of the work, and you need to thread them onto a needle and sew them into the back of the work so that they don't come undone. Now, threading a needle when you have quite a few ends is a right pain, so I'm going to cheat. I'm going to be cheating. So I've been using these cheaters needles, which if you put the thread on the top, it slips into the eye of the needle without having to thread it properly, which is brilliant. I don't suppose you can really see it, but they're called cheaters needles or self-threading needles, and for using those if you're doing free motion stitched embroidery with a machine, just makes it so much easier for threading those threads into the back of the work. I used to think, oh, they're really cheaters needles, but do you know what? When you're trying to thread lots and lots of ends to the back of the work, they're a brilliant idea. So that is my gadget for this week. I may have purchased a gadget, which I will show in on next week's podcast, I think, if it arrives. So it'll be a combination of a confession and a gadget in the same thing. So hopefully that'll arrive by next week so I can show it to you. Now we've got the blast from the past. So after a week of being in the spare room, Barbara is out again. And she is raring to go. So come on, Barbara, show me what you got on. Welcome back, Barbara. So this is another A-line dress that my nanny used to wear. So if you haven't watched the podcast before, you won't know that I'm showing you some of the dresses that my nanny used to wear. So these dresses have been in the wardrobe for 40 years since she died. She died the year before I was born, so it almost tells you how old I am. So these dresses have been sort of in the wardrobe, unworn, and instead of them going to the charity shop, I'm going to take care of them because they're all handmade, and I'm going to share them with you before I pop them in the attic, because they're not going to fit me. So this is an A-line skirt that goes just about to the knee. And it's got some really interesting darts here. So there's a dart that goes right from the hip all the way to the bust point, well, nearly to the bust point, down there. And then there's also a side dart that comes up the side here. Sorry, Barbara, I don't mean to touch your boob. And if you go around the back, there's some back darts here, either side of a central zip that goes right up to the top. It's absolutely fully lined with a green fabric. I shall show you that. So it's got some dark green fabric on the inside. Not my favourite combination of fabrics, to be honest. And it's also lined right to the sleeve as well, right down to the sleeve. So it must have been one that she wore to sort of go out of, and more of a wintry garment. I don't say that it's my favourite fabric, to be honest, but it is an interesting shape. There's also a slight puff sleeve, just to give it a bit of lovely shape there, makes it look a bit more feminine. And I noticed that there's another dress as well that had a very similar shape, so I'll get Barbara to show you that now. Thank you, Barbara. So you can see this is basically the same dress where you've got a dart that runs all the way down here, and then also a side dart that goes across towards the bust apex. There are darts across the back and then a zip. Barbara, it definitely isn't going to zip up in this one. And full length sleeves and completely fully lined as the last one was, and it's got a corally pink lining under there. I quite like this fabric, but obviously she used to wear it with this this little waistcoat here, but I'm not I'm not keen on the two together. It's a bit much of the same fabric, I think. I think I would have gone for a solid colour to go with that. And this one's lined fully with the same corally fabric as the dress, but there we go. I bet she looked smart at the time though, but I'm not keen on a waistcoat completely matching. But there we go. So that's the two of Nana's dresses I'm going to show for this week. If there are a couple of them that are the same pattern, I'm going to show you them together so you can see the sort of differences. I haven't had a chance to look to see if there is a pattern that I could find that had this same sort of dark patterning in. But if I do, I'll put them in the show notes. So thank you very much, Barbara. Thanks, Barbara. She's glad she's out of that spare room. Oh dear. So just got my shop update and my Ask Me Anything bit, and then the little demo of me doing my drop spindle. I am not an expert, so don't expect to learn anything from it. So my shop update is going to be this Friday at 7 o'clock. I'm just going to do them every Friday now from now on, and just tell you in the episode what's going to happen this week. So this week I'm making available DK yarn in all of my colourways, so watch out for that. I'll be at 7 o'clock on Friday. I have been slowly reworking the website so it's easy to navigate. If you have any suggestions on how you think it would be improved, that'd be really appreciated if you could let me know. But hopefully it's reasonably easy to navigate now. So I have the Ask Me Anything question. So a lovely lady was asking me whether I'd show how I do my cross stitch, how I start and finish off. So I will do a little clip and insert it now. So I'm going to show you how I start and finish on my cross stitch. So I get one of the threads out of the embroidery floss. I make sure that I put two of the ends together, and then you should end up with the loop on the other side. So I'm going to thread those two ends into the needle. So you end up with that loop on that end of the thread. So where you want to do your cross stitch, the top left of where you're going to do your first cross stitch, you need to go down, and then you come up where that first part of the cross stitch would finish. Make sure that you scoop up that loop and pull it tight so that you've completed that cross stitch, and then go back down in the same hole as you've just come up, and that attaches your thread to your cross stitch without having some unsightly ends on the back of the work. I'm now finished working with my thread. It's only really short, and I've come to the back of the work, and then I'm just going to thread it about 4 times or 5 times through little loops at the back. And pull that through, and then I'll just snip it off closely to there. That's as neat as I can get it. So I hope that was helpful. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I shall see you